I feel like seasons in marriage, specifically regarding sex, can just be intentional times to want to look after and know, okay, there's a season changing. We need to look after our sex life right now. We're having a kid. Somebody's retiring. I just had a hysterectomy, and then all those hormone changes, and all the things that happen in a lifetime of marriage, and all those season changes. Just being intentional knowing, hey, this is a
Yeah.
time to really look after our sex life.
Do you ever feel like you're missing the mark with your wife? You're not alone. We ask over 600 wives what they really want their husbands to understand. The results? 10 powerful insights and 10 simple actions to help you love her better. Stop guessing, start connecting. Join the 10-day challenge today. Find the link in our show notes. Welcome to today's Awesome Marriage Podcast. My special guest today is Chelsea Smith. She's just released a brand new marriage resource that is going to empower you and your spouse to turn your marriage dream into your marriage reality. I do today a 52-week guide to the marriage you've been waiting for. Chelsea, along with her husband Judah, lead Church Home, a digitally based faith community and content platform. She has a master's degree in theology from Fuller Seminary. After 25 years, she's still madly in love with her husband, and the two of them have raised 3 wonderful children who she loves to be around. This conversation is for every spouse and every marriage that dreams of a relationship full of connection, trust, and laughter. Let's go to the studio right now. Well, Chelsea, so glad that you are here. I've been a fan of Judas, and with that, you hear about Chelsea all the time for a number of years now. And then to see you release this book on your own, and I'm excited we get to talk about that today. So thanks for saying yes and joining me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for dedicating your life's work towards marriage. I just, obviously I wrote a book on marriage, so it matters, but I think marriage is the hardest, most fulfilling thing that I've done so far in my lifetime. And I just think we can't do it on our own. So thank you for all of the work that you have done, the time, the wisdom, the counseling. It's an incredible work that you've given yourself to. So just thank you.
That's so nice. Thank you. It is, it's a God deal. I never would have dreamed of doing any of the stuff I'm doing at one time in my life. And he just had a plan. And he's opened doors. So thank you for that. And I agree. Marriage probably is the hardest and most rewarding relationship we have in this life. Absolutely. So thank you for the model that you and Judah are also.
We're trying. We're doing. People get to learn from us the right and the wrong. So hopefully that'll come out today.
And I think people need to see that. I don't, where Nancy and I got to today, and we had a pretty good argument a couple of weeks ago. We're not perfect, and I don't want people to ever think we're perfect. I want them to know that we still work at it. We've had to work at it. We've been through tough times too. But it's worth it. It's worth every bit of it for sure.
Yeah, it sure
so
is. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think, your kids got to see you and Nancy going through that and know what normal work and ebbs and flow is. And Judah and I feel like we had this incredible gift that both of us grew up in homes of a healthy marriage from our parents, not perfect, but
Right.
healthy. My parents are just about to celebrate 55 years or just celebrated 55
awesome.
years. Judah's parents were married for 40 years until his dad passed away from cancer. And we got to see that. And the older I've gotten and the more we've done ministry and life with people, and all you have to do is look at the divorce rates in our country to realize not a lot of people get to see what a marriage looks like day in, day out. What are the everyday decisions? I love that you said you and your wife got in a fight, because that is the reality.
That's real.
It's real. But I think sometimes if you haven't seen that model growing up and know that that's real and know that that's healthy and know that that's normal, all of a sudden, you're 2 years married and you're 5 years married and you're still getting in a fight with your spouse, and you think, is there something wrong with me with them? Is this the wrong person?
Right.
So I'm really blown away by your perspective and what you provide in this space.
Well, and I think the good thing I see now is when we do get in an argument or disagreement out something, we recover a lot quicker, and we talk about it and we try to learn something out of it. And we still do that. Like, okay, how did we get in that? Could I
Well,
have said something
yep.
different? Could she have said something different? And part of that is just being a counselor, I guess. And for a long time, Nancy thought I was trying to counsel her when I would say things like that. And we finally helped her realize, no, I just want us to learn and grow and be better. So it's great. And it's just nice to be used by the Lord. It's such an honor, I think, in every way. So let's kind of jump into this book. You open it with sharing your heart for the couples who use the resource or will read the book. What was the motivation and dream behind this? Because I think it's an amazing book.
Oh, thank you. I think a lot of it is actually almost what I was saying earlier, is letting people see what marriage looks like. I think our marriage is a healthy marriage. Is we still fight, but we still love each other and we still like each other. And
Yeah.
giving people an opportunity to see what a marriage looks like. Not in There are incredible marriage resources out there. I think two of my favorites would be the five love languages, love and
Yeah.
respect. To me, those are great pillars that are just incredible principles for marriage.
Absolutely.
But what we found in our life and ministry is that so much of the pain, the unnecessary pain of marriage can happen in the everyday moments, or when kind of that sizzle seems to go and you don't know how to get it back. I
Hmm.
think it has so much more to do with little everyday decisions and habits and conversations than even, are we learning how to do these big great things. And actually in the book, honestly, the publisher offered me more money to do hey, they're like, if you just do a trade book, if you just do a chapter book that somebody can sit down and read in a month, they're like, we'll give you more money for that. But my heart was actually, now I'm making
Oh,
myself sound like a martyr. I'm not a martyr, but
no.
was really wanting to give people good everyday habits in life. And the thing is, I don't feel like those come from just sitting down and reading a book in a month, but that's why it's a
No.
52-week journey of, hey, here's a thought to think about this week, and then here's a conversation to have, and here's an activity to do together, and to get couples to build healthy habits in their marriage that are everyday habits that can give this life-giving fun, you still fight but you still love each other marriage, that I really do believe is such a gift. That when our marriages are that, it's like we said, it's the most fulfilling relationship, and I think the most fulfilling thing in life when we can have that. So I wanted to do something that could give people a tool to give them that gift to have the joy that I found in marriage, and really to pass that on.
That's okay. And I think if people just that you have one kind of topic, I guess that's the right word, a week
Yeah.
for that you can really build into that in a week. And then next week you can build something else. And I was just thinking, if you go through a year and do those, and oh my gosh, you should write about how you describe your marriage today, do that for a year, and then look back on that. And I'll guarantee you it's going to be better because you've been intentional about it and you guide them through really important things in marriage.
Yeah, I love what you said, intentionality about it. I think so often in life, especially when I think through where Judah and I are entering into the empty nest season of life right now. So our kids are 21, 18, and 16. So we've been through a decent amount of seasons.
Yeah.
Not We haven't got to grandkids yet. I can't wait to get there. But having gone through enough seasons in marriage, you realize life tries to come at you, and sports and your kids' activities and bills and job and all of these things just are fighting for our attention, and Netflix shows,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so often we just take life as it comes instead of what you said, being intentional with it. And that's so much of what this book is about. Let's be intentional with the most important relationship we have so that we can really end up with a relationship that we want to have. And I think with marriage, we think, oh, if we love each other, we'll just get there. We'll just go
Yeah.
through life. And it actually requires intentionality, just like anything else that is important in this life.
Oh, exactly. I think it's just that whole deal of that we need to continue to work on it. And because I think guys, we seem to be worse at this than our wives do of thinking, well, I pursued her and I got her to say yes. And now I just kind of coast. And you can't do that, right? You've got to go past that time at the altar when you said I do and keep going forward.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. The book actually starts with a chapter about sex, and that's so intentional. Thinking, okay, if we can start with sex, I think we can get the husbands on board with this as
Absolutely.
well. So that was the goal there.
No, I think so. That's in fact Tiffany, who is our podcast producer, and I were talking this morning, and she was telling me how she's just started just at week one, and she said now I'm going. She said I was doing it just to think about things for the podcast, but now my husband and I are going to go through it, and he will love it because we're starting with sex. I go, brilliant, just brilliant.
I'm glad it worked for one couple at least, because there is something that tends for us as wives to want to nurture and foster our relationship. And
Oh
like you
yeah,
said, sometimes it's not so innate for husbands, although they want that marriage just as much. It just can feel a little less attainable sometimes, I think.
yes. So when we decide to make these changes, Nancy and I've experienced this. I'm pretty sure you and Judah have. There is some opposition, spiritual opposition along the way.
Mm.
Should we expect that? Is that going to be? Is that something that happens to people besides just us?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. I actually have a chapter in the book. It talks about Luke Skywalker, may the force be with you, but that actually
Yeah.
talks about the spiritual opposition to our marriages. Because as for you and I, followers of Jesus, and this book works for people whether they're religious or not, but it definitely comes from my perspective, which is, hey, Jesus is my superhero, and so
Yes.
we use him along the way. That as followers of Jesus, I mean, the Bible makes it so clear that our marriages, more than the work we do in the world, more than the worship services we go to, or the sermons that we preach, it is our marriages that demonstrate what the relationship between Jesus and his
Mm.
church is. That it's a mystery. It doesn't make sense. Selfless love and all the things that Jesus did for us, but
Yeah.
the glimpse that we get to have of that on earth, on this planet, is our marriages. And so if for no other reason, I actually believe that when we talk about evangelism and showing the world who Jesus is and telling people about Jesus, I really believe that our marriages are the strongest evangelistic tool that we have in our tool belt, because that is God's design for showing the world what it looks like for the way that Jesus loved the church, is seeing that through marriage. So first of all, I think that's a reason that there is going to be some spiritual attack around our marriages.
Hmm.
And the second thing is that when we demonstrate selfless love, which is required in marriage. I don't know if you felt this way, but man, when Judah and I first got married, I realized, oh, I'm selfish. I just want to do things for myself and do what I want to do and when I want to do it. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to mesh my life with this other person. And you have to learn selfless love, self-sacrificing love,
Absolutely.
which is the love that Jesus has for us. And so the enemy hates that, and hates that when that is happening
Mm.
in the world. And so, yeah, there is a spiritual resistance to us being intentional with our marriage, which, thank you for bringing that up. I do feel like encouraging people that so often you can start down a journey, you can start a path, that you can be intentional work in your marriage, and all of a sudden it feels like all hell breaks loose in your life,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
just there is resistance, and push through, fight through, because the resistance is almost good. I look at that resistance and feel like, oh, thanks for the confirmation that we're doing the right thing. And so for couples
Yes.
to take that resistance and celebrate it and get more determined because of it.
Yeah. And God's there to help you with that. I mean, we know that He's
Yeah.
more powerful, stronger, all those kind of things
Yeah.
than the enemy. And the enemy just wants to scare us away. I think the thing that I feel like he hates more than anything right now are Christian marriages, because he knows what healthy Christian marriage, where you're growing together, working on your marriage, serving each other, what that does not only for the marriage, but like you were saying, for the people we come in contact with, for our kids, for our grandkids, people that see us. And the enemy doesn't want people to see that.
Yeah, and I believe it's not only for the world, but also for our children, and that
Yeah,
the best gift that we can give our children is a healthy marriage, is a self-sacrificing,
absolutely.
loving marriage. And I grew up, my parents, like I said, about celebrating 55 years of marriage. They still like each other. Dr.
Awesome.
Kim, they still go on dates on Friday nights. They have had Friday night date night since since I was a little kid, as long as I can remember. And
That's
they
so
live at
cool.
home together, but they still go
Yeah.
go on dates. But they also would travel. They would take vacations. They left my sister and I at home, and I'm really grateful for that because it gave me a perspective that, oh, I missed my parents for those times when they prioritized their marriage above my sister and I, but actually that was the best gift that they could give us. And sometimes I do see, and I don't know if you see this at all, but just in life and ministry, is Christian marriages and Christian homes beginning to prioritize children above
Mhm.
marriages, and whether that's giving your time to your kids' activities or your money towards your kids' activities, or not wanting to leave them for a vacation or a date night, or those things that are required for that intentionality. And I agree with you. Christian marriages are the most important things, even more than the way we raise our kids, because I believe the best gift that we can give our children is our marriage and the love that we have for. Do you agree, disagree? I feel like it's a controversial
No,
statement. What are your
no,
thoughts?
no, absolutely. And I think it's one of the things that I see couples struggle with in the counseling room of when I really tell them you
Mhm.
need those date nights, you need that time every day to sit down face to face because that makes a difference. And what usually helps them when I say, what kind of marriage do you want your kids to have? And they all know
Oh,
what they want their kids to have. And I said, well, you're their model, you're their textbook. What they see in you is what they're going to have a tendency to do. And so the more they see you nurturing your marriage, the more they're going to want to do that in their own lives. And so, yeah, I think it's, it's so important that we do those things so our kids can see them, because it's going to make a difference for them too.
I love that so much. And I love the perspective that you have, because you're not only a podcaster, but you sit in the counseling room and talk with couples and live this and walk this out hours and hours a week as well. What do you think about the statement that it is that little everyday things in marriage can be just as powerful or detrimental in building the marriage we want, or taking away from the marriage we want, as the big things? Or how much do little things add up to the big things that we tend to see in marriage?
Yeah, yeah, right. They do, and I think it's because they just kind of made me like if you pick a big ice block, you just kind of chip a little bit away of it. You don't really notice
Mhm.
it, but you keep chipping and chipping, and then all of a sudden you realize we've either built something really good or we've chipped away at something that really has hurt our marriage over time. So, yeah, the not coming, just little things that I help people see. It's important to greet each other when you come in the door at night, when you both get home at night. Don't come in
Oh,
and start doing your deal when your spouse is there. Find your spouse. And um, I did, and I can remember when the kids were little, and they're going to run to you as soon as the door opens. The dogs are running, so I've got two kids and three dogs, and I'm saying, "Where are you, Nancy?" Because I want,
yeah.
I want to at least greet her, and then I go play with the kids and stuff like that. But I think those little things, all of those things help build your marriage. Just the little things day to day. I don't think a woman ever gets tired of her husband saying you're beautiful. And and I love you. And I think, we need to do that. I think Nancy, like most women at times, I'll say that when she probably thinks she looks her worst. And so I get this kind of look from her like, you don't really mean that, but I do. I really do. But I think it's doing those things. And the other side of it is the negative things of, you
Mm.
know, uh, being short with our spouse, ignoring our spouse, all the things that we do that just don't send the message that I love you and I care about you and I love you, warts and all. I know everything about you and I love you and I like you. And so for me, it's always been about God, how do I serve her today? Not always. When I finally began to, when I finally began to get it, it was, Lord, how do I serve her today? And God is so faithful to bring something to my
Mm.
mind or something that I read or see during that day. Um, and I think over time, it's made such a difference for us, and it's overridden the things that we just kind of messed up or we didn't do really well at. Because the big things are going to crash a marriage. You have somebody has an affair with, and you got a lot of work to do if you're going to rebuild that marriage. Um, and so we think, well, those are the big things that we don't want to do, but not doing the things that encourage each other or build each other or show your love for each other day to day over time. erodes your marriage too.
Erodes is such a powerful word because it's that daily taking away, or it can be that daily building. When I think of little things too, I think of the thoughts we think towards our spouse that,
Mm,
nobody's ever going to see, nobody's going to know other than us or God. But what we meditate on regarding our spouse. I tell a story about when the kids were little. I was working part-time, Judah was full-time, so Fridays were my day home and he was working to clean the house. And I spent a Friday just picking up after Judah, picking up a pair of underwear, picking up a dish, and with
hmm.
everything I had to do, it was a thought that was, "Oh, I can't believe I have to do this. Doesn't he know I have 3 kids? How does he?" And by the
Yeah.
time poor Judah, by the time he walked in the door and probably did try to greet me, he came home to a angry, frustrated, just looking down on him. Why, poor guy had just been working all day, walked home and had no idea what he was walking into. And of course,
Yeah.
put the kids to bed, get in a fight, ruin our Friday evening. And I was just like, Was that worth it, Chelsea? Was that worth it?
Mm.
Here you have a good man who loves you, who's doing his best, who's out working." And so the next Friday, and here's the worst part of it, Dr. Kim. All of those thoughts and all of that nagging and everything I came down for when he walked in the door, it didn't change him one teeny tiny bit. The next Friday, he still had
No.
underwear out. He still had dishes. So I'm still in the same scenario. But that day I just thought, okay, I don't want what happened last Friday to happen again. So every time I do
Yeah.
something, I'm going to think a thought towards Judah of, I'm so grateful for him. Man, he loves me. It was amazing how he played with the kids last night. And he
Mm.
did tell me and just those thoughts that I was thinking towards my husband. The wildest thing was none of the circumstances changed. They were the exact same from one Friday to the next Friday. But Judah came home to a wife who was grateful for him, in love with him, showing him just all of the love and respect that he craved. And then he gave it back to me. And that Friday night was completely
That's
different.
cool.
And it was just the power of the thoughts I was thinking towards my husband that made that huge difference from one week to the next.
It does, and we know that we talk a lot. I talk a lot about reframing your spouse.
Mm,
What are the things that you think about your spouse, and sometimes I think we're not even aware of the negative thoughts because we're kind of like you could get self righteous in that I'm having to pick up after him again. This is he does this all the time, and then you can reframe that just like you did in the good things he did. Maybe each piece of something that you have to pick up is you think about something positive about him, and it just makes a difference. And it's so much healthier for us when we do that for our spouse, because
yeah.
we're going to be a better person. We're going to be more the spouse that God wanted us to be, and yeah, and just doing things for each other, which kind of goes into the process I think that you have in the book of think about it, talk about it, and do something about it. And it kind of follows along that because I think we talk about being intentional. That really helps you be intentional in your marriage, right?
Yeah. And two, in that I'm an internal processor. I have to think before I talk. That is how I am hardwired. God made me this way. And so it's a nod to the internal processors to have a moment of think about it. Take a moment and you read the story or this topic that it's normally something
Hmm.
Jude and I did right or did wrong or something that's happening in the world, and then giving couples space to read that together and then actually just think about it. Here are some questions. What's a memory from your childhood? How do you react when you hear about this? And giving those couples, but especially for internal processors, to take a moment to think about it. And then what that think about it does is it leads to, I believe, a really constructive conversation that I just think those meaningful conversations are just the foundation to a healthy marriage, and getting to
Hmm.
talk about something significant and meaningful. But so often in the busyness of life, we just don't have those conversations, or we don't even know how to bring them up or where to start. So to have a guide to say, okay, you've thought about these things. Now talk about these things with your spouse. And
Yeah.
um, the questions are asked in a very non-confrontational way to to say more, well, I feel and I think and this, so that we can get understanding for one another. Proverbs says, above all else, get understanding. And so having those talk about it moments where we actually can have a meaningful conversation with each other and then
Absolutely.
do something about it is like, go do something fun or go do something
Yeah.
constructive or go make a memory and actually solidify this conversation that you guys had to build these new habits into the everyday aspects of your marriage.
Yes, and buying the book and doing that every week is going to be a lot cheaper than therapy. I promise, as a counselor. you know, because they're doing the things. When I can get couples to be intentional about. My pastor, Craig Rochelle, asked me one time years ago. He said, "What's the number one thing that makes a difference in counseling?" And I said, "Getting couples to pray together." And I think when you pray together and then you become intentional about your marriage, yeah, you're still going to have tough times to go through, but you're going to go through them in a very different than if you weren't doing those things.
Yeah. I love that you said pray together. I feel like if we're made up of, the Bible talks about, spirit, soul, and body, and there's,
Right.
If our body is our physical
Yeah.
body, our soul is our mind and our emotions, and our spirit is just the seat of who we are, where we connect with God. We're craving intimacy with our spouse. And I really believe, and Jude and I have experienced this, when we're intimate in our body through sex and touch and cuddling and kissing and all those things, and intimate in our soul through conversations and sharing emotions. That's great. But that deepest level is praying together and being intimate in our spiritual lives. And there is a vulnerability of talking to God in front of my spouse and letting Judah see my deepest fears, or hearing my request of God, or hearing me. It's still, after 25 years, for me, a vulnerable thing to do, but when we pray together. But you're right, it is one of the most significant acts. Has it gotten any easier for you to pray with your spouse, or does it still sometimes feel vulnerable?
It can at times. Our story really started. We prayed on our honeymoon night, and that was because Nancy had a mentor that told her the most important thing in your marriage is for you guys to pray. So we're in the hotel room after all this stuff. She comes out in her nightgown, and I'm not thinking about prayer, honestly. So she comes over and says, "We need to pray." And what am I? I said, "Yeah." And I said, "What do we pray?" Now, we'd prayed. When we were dating, we prayed maybe over meals or stuff. We never prayed anything that would be considered vulnerable or anything like that. So we prayed the Lord's Prayer, and we did that for a long time. And then we kind of started adding things that we would pray silently about. I was scared to death to pray out loud, other than something that was scripted, like the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And so God just kind of brought us step by step. And I tell people too, you can hold hands and pray the Lord's Prayer the rest of your life. That's great. It's not like you're going up this ladder, but just be open to where God would lead you. Nancy was the first one to pray very vulnerably in our marriage. And I remember the first time I did, after I finished, I just said some things I'd never said out loud in front of anybody. And I just looked at her, and she just kind of had this kind of tears in her eyes. She was so thankful and so grateful that I had taken that step to pray vulnerably. So where are we today with it? I think it's such a normal part of our marriage that it comes much, much easier now. Maybe there's times that there's certain things going on, and I want to pray about it with Nancy, so I may have a little hesitation. But overall, it's just who we are. It's become such an important part of our life.
Oh, that's amazing. And the trust and intimacy that builds.
Oh, yeah.
And the awareness of both coming together and admitting we need something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
We need God outside of ourselves to come and walk with us in this journey and help us, and to see each other know that and admit that. I think just is such an incredible gift. One of the things that we do is Church Home, the church that Jude and I lead, is we have 5 to 7 minute daily guided prayers, and they're leading people through a prayer based on the scripture verse. And I think if couples don't know where to start, like you said, the Lord's Prayer or something scripted, starting with the daily guided prayer that we do, and it's just something to get us in that journey. The Lord's Prayer is very beautiful, and that's a great place to start. And that intimacy of being fully known and knowing that happens through that is just beautiful.
So is that guide available to people outside of Church Home?
Yeah. It's they're just on our website. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing. Yeah. Just on our website. They're there every day. Amazing.
Maybe with all we have today, Chelsea, when Nancy and I got married, there was so little to help us in those areas. There were nobody
Wow.
was putting out that we found, not in the church we're in, things like that, that I think help us. Because I think as guys, I do see a lot of guys that really want to be the spiritual leader in their home, but they don't know where to start. Or they said, let's read the Bible, and they opened up to Leviticus, and so they're, and
Or
they're
even
going,
Genesis. By the time you get to about Genesis
yeah,
8,
and
like,
it's
what?
like, oh, no. And so I think the tools that we have make it, the YouVersion Bible has been such a blessing to
Oh,
have people, well, just use the verse of the day or find a reading plan together. The tools are there now that make
yeah.
it so much easier to do some of these things that we didn't have those tools. We had the Bible. I guess that was more than enough. But
But
again, it was just like that was kind of a little bit awkward too at times, for
that's
sure.
a great perspective, because I think at my age, so many times I look at the world and I think of all the distractions that are out there, of all the
Mm-hmm.
things that are vying for our attention and that are trying to get us away, from intimacy with our spouse and that intentionality, and whether it's just death scrolling on social media or the latest show on Netflix. But I that is a great perspective, that along with that has come so many incredible tools to
Mm-hmm.
help us and to really walk with us in our journey. So excited to celebrate, by the way, the billionth download of the YouVersion app.
Isn't that
Such
amazing?
an amazing, yes. We're actually we're I think we're going to be out with you to celebrate that,
Oh,
because it's
good.
such a
Yeah, we're
big deal.
gonna.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Well, because we're gonna be. I can cut part of this because we're getting off topic. But yeah, we have a lot of YouVersion plans on, and so we're gonna be there through the whole day and that evening. And Chelsea, when I first started, we started Awesome Marriage. YouVersion just started by reading plans, and I'd go out there, and the YouVersion office was 7 people in 1.5 rooms. And that was it. And so I'd sit down and say, well, what are people asking for about marriage? And so we would, I'd say, okay, I can write a plan for that, and write a plan, and to see where it has grown and how many
Wow.
downloads and all those kind of things. It just kind of makes me, I don't know. There's just something so excited. I get so excited when I think about this is really happening.
Yeah, there's something humbling about it. And also, I think of that scripture in one of the prophets that says, in the sorry, we're really off topic now, but then in the last day, then in the last days, the church will become this great mountain that people will come to. And you think about 1 billion people coming to the Bible, I think it's very significant in the
It,
world that we live in.
yes, to think there's there's 1 billion people that have the Bible in their purse or their pocket is just amazing. And I know
Yeah.
the angels in heaven have got to kind of celebrate that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
The
For
Gideons
sure.
would be proud.
Oh my gosh.
Think of all the
Yes.
think of all
All
the work to get Gideon Bibles out.
oh my gosh. And the guys, people went door handing them out and all kinds of
Uh,
things like that. Wow.
yeah.
Well, let's go. Let me ask you about the little white pill. What is that?
Oh.
And why do we keep looking for it?
Oh man, the little white pill. I feel like I have friends who were so good at natural medicine, and you have a headache, and one of my cousin is the best at this. Oh, here's this essential oil, and maybe it'll help you in 2 hours. And I think that's great. And dealing with the root causes is important. But Dr. Kim, I got to be honest, there are times when I have a headache and I just want to take an Advil and for the pain to go away. I just want to feel different quickly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part of that's negative about it. But I think in our marriages, God has given us truly a little white pill in our marriage, which is his gift to marriage, which is the sex that we get to have. I'll never forget when my oldest son was in 8th grade in LA public schools, he had his first sex ed seminar. And all the things that you could hear about public schools. So my experience has been, those are great. Those rumors have been greatly exaggerated, because he came home with a paper about why to choose abstinence from his public school seminar on sex ed. And one of the things this paper talked about was the chemical oxytocin, which is exchanged when the act of sex happened. And they described this as the glue hormone, that literally when you have sex with somebody, it is a glue hormone that knits you and bonds you to this person. And so you need to, to teenagers, you need to be careful with that. But to a married couple who are trying to navigate this life and living together and kids and all of these things that God has given us in marriage, we need to recognize that sex I really believe is that little white pill, can be that shortcut, can be that, yeah, it's not always going to fix the root problems. Yes, there's some things that need to be talked about and dug into deeper. But man, when you just want to take something really quick that's going to make you feel different quickly,
Yeah.
utilizing that gift that God has given to us in marriage, and it glues us together. It makes it, all of the benefits of sex in the right category is incredible. What it does for our
Right.
heart, for our health, for our emotional well-being. I mean, I'm not, I'm preaching to the choir here. You know this better
No,
than
but
I
you're
do,
right.
but I think sometimes in marriage, and maybe this can be even particularly true in Christian marriages and women, is we think, well, we got to get to all the root issues, and then somehow sex is going to be a reward or a benefit once we get all these root issues solved. And I don't think it is a either or. It is a both. It is a both and. But sometimes I think, my experience, we can just take a shortcut when we're annoyed at each other, when we're not feeling great, when all these things in life and worries and stresses are swirling, and just this beautiful act of sex, which is God's gift to our marriage, can be like that little white pill that can make you feel better quickly and kind of give you some momentum to then do the hard work.
I agree. I think it's there's a connection that comes, and I've said for years there's sex is different in a Christian marriage because there's a spiritual component to that, and I don't know how it all works, but I totally agree
Mm.
with you that it can just make a difference. It makes a difference of how you, I think, begin to look at each other again. It connects you in a way that you can take that into any discussions that you need to have or conversations. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and Paul talks about it. Don't deprive each other. So
Yeah.
that's not there's a reason behind all those kind of things, and I think because it does make a difference. And when I work with a couple that hadn't had sex, I've had a couple come in that we haven't had sex in a year or 10 months or things like that. There is the drift apart, I think, goes quicker and goes farther when that's taken off the table.
Yeah. And the little annoyances become bigger, and
Oh
the
yeah.
forgiveness becomes harder. You forget that you're one and on the same team, and all of those benefits that God designed for us. We actually can tap into them frequently and often. And I realize different couples are in different places, and
Sure.
people have different backgrounds with sex, and realizing there's so much to go into this statement. But I do believe at its truest core is, especially as Christians, people who follow God and God's design, let's follow it.
Right. And the our culture, actually forever, if you look back, it's distorted sex. And I think
Mm.
if the more we can understand what the gift that it is from God and how He designed it to work in our lives and in our marriages, if we can set those other things aside, I think what you and I are talking about right now, makes total sense. That it is something God gave us for not only enjoyment, but the connection and it communicates love, it communicates care. There's so many things that come out of it good. And so I just encourage couples that, if there's something standing in the way, get to work on it. Start working on it. Don't let
Yeah,
it just stay there.
when you have those couples who it's been 10 months, a year and a half, what's your first step that you give them?
I try to look at what's keeping them, what's the barrier there? When did that start?
Mm,
Usually it started with something and it just kind of perpetuated itself. And so it's going back and say, okay, what happened here? And try to
wow.
see if that something needs to be resolved, or was that an excuse, just kind of unpack it with them. And then usually, I give homework to have sex, honestly. And I want to make sure they're both comfortable. I want to stay at the comfort. One thing I think is so important in sex, you stay at the comfort level, the one who's least comfortable, but
Yep,
you're also
yep.
willing to be adventuresome with each other too. And so, uh, yeah, I think it's just trying to help them see that through God's eyes and the difference it will make. It's not going to fix everything, but it's going to make going through the process, I think, a lot better and probably more connected.
Yeah, it's so well said. I mean, it feels like the oil that helps everything just run smoother. It's not gonna
Yeah.
fix the engine, but man, it's gonna run
No.
a whole lot smoother if there's some grease in the gears, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so,
And if they're not, you're in trouble. If you're not
yeah,
greasing those gears,
that friction's is gonna
yeah,
happen for sure.
eventually it's not going to work anymore.
See, I feel like seasons in marriage, specifically regarding sex, can just be intentional times to want to look after and know, okay, there's a season changing. We need to look after our sex life right now. We're having a kid. Somebody's retiring. I just had a hysterectomy, and then all those hormone changes, and all the things that happen in a lifetime of marriage, and all those season changes. Just being intentional with knowing, hey, this is a
Yeah.
time to really look after our sex life right now.
Yeah. When I was growing up, my dad's in the supermarket business and had some stores in Oklahoma City. And one summer, I was working in the produce department of one of the stores, and there was a guy that worked there. He was not the head of the department; he just kind of helped. He was in his 80s, and every Saturday night, he would go buy some flowers from the flower department. And Saturday night was his, as he said, this is my and mama's night. And they went out to dinner and they made love. And I thought, first time I figured out, I think it took me a while to figure out what he was doing. But then
what him and mama's night was.
Yeah. And so then, but I thought, how cool. And I think it gave me hope. I mean, just thinking you can have sex with your wife your whole life. And, it was just such a beautiful thing, the way he talked about her, talked about their relationship. He didn't talk about their sex life really, but you knew there was something that they loved and enjoyed together. And I thought, that's such a beautiful thing, that is such an important part of their life, and they celebrate it together. And he celebrated her well, I think.
To have that spark and that sparkle. And I think so often, when you're 5 years into marriage or even 20 years into marriage, you look at that and think, yes, that's the goal. But it can feel so impossible and overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
How do we get there? How do we actually do that when we're in the 80s? So I don't know one person who's married right now who wouldn't hear that story and think, oh yeah, that's goals right there.
I want to be there, right? And then you do it by doing the things we're talking about every day. Intentional every day. He didn't get there at 82 years old, all of a sudden said, hey, mama, this is what we're going to do.
Saturday.
No, it just evolved, and it was something that was our priority and important to both of them. And he was very intentional about being the one that continued to initiate that. And I loved it.
Oh, that's such a beautiful picture. I can't wait to tell Judah that story, by the way. Thank you for sharing that.
Good.
That's amazing.
So when you talk, I think it's week 24, you talk about God's first mention of marriage. Why does going back to what God says about marriage matter so much if we want the kind of relationship he designed for us? Because I think it's another thing that we can get lost of. What was God's intention in the first place? Because you mentioned Netflix, everything. None of those, I don't tell people not to watch Netflix. We watch Netflix series. But there's a lot of things that have not given us God's plan for marriage. Why is it so important to get back to that?
Oh, I love this question. I think first of all, it's a question of our perspective of God. Of do we actually see God as our loving, kind Father who has the best of intentions and plans? And Jesus himself said, hey, I came so that you could have life and life more abundantly. And do we see God as this giver of abundant life? And the scripture says that the fruit of the kingdom is righteousness and peace and joy. Do we trust that doing things God's way are going to lead to abundant life and peace and joy? Or do we see God as this angry judge in the sky, just waiting to count all of our wrongs against us and be mad at us? And so I think it's got to start with what is our view of God, and do we see him and trust him in that way? And for all the reasons I think we don't always have that view of God, I think it's got to start there. But and then secondly, it cracked me up when you actually look at what was God's first words about marriage to Adam and Eve, which is wild when you think about it. You would think it would have been sacrificially love each other. There's a lot of things that you would think it would be, but the fact that he said, and for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and become one with his wife. First of all, I think it's funny because Adam and Eve didn't have a mother or a father. So
Right.
so what's up up with that. But I do think there is something so important, particularly to the way that we leave our families of origin, that
Mm.
that sets us, that is really God's plan for our marriage, that we do that well, and we do that with forgiveness, and we do that with actually leaving. And our aim isn't to please our parents anymore, but it's to please and
Yeah.
all of those things in that particular instance of God's plan for marriage.
Mhm. No, it's so good, and I think, I can see the difference in couples, especially young couples that have really made that break, the leave and cleave,
Well,
and those who haven't, and because you're still kind of enmeshed in the family of origin, and some family of origins, even though the ones that are real healthy, you're still kind of still enmeshed in that, and then the ones that are unhealthy, that doesn't help your marriage at all. And so I encourage them, just have your own identity. You're still part
mm,
of the family, but you got to have your own identity. You got to be here and they're there, and you want them to see you that way, because like you said, that's God's plan. We leave
yeah.
our family of origin or single life, whatever we're leaving at that time, depending on our age, and we join ourselves to our spouse for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I find couples that so dramatically leave their family, they move across country and they think, I want to do things so different, and I never want to, I'm setting all of these all these rules against my family. They actually have done the least leaving, because not
Mm,
realizing that they've still carried all of that 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 pain, that bitterness, that unforgiveness, that all of that is,
yeah,
you can leave geographically and not leave in your heart. And I think really making sure that and again, that's in the book, this is a setup to have a conversation with your spouse of how have we done with that, and when's the last time we were intentional, and so
right.
these are light everyday topics, but that really can go to deep meaningful places in our heart together with our spouse, so that we can make sure that we're attending to those things in
Yeah,
careful and loving ways.
and sometimes it helps. What I see is it helps them get into something that maybe they've kind of not wanted to get into or put on the back burner. But now we're kind of into it, we're talking about it, and we can begin to maybe take some steps that we probably need to take for a long time. But it gives us it puts the structure around doing some of those things that are going to really make a
Yep.
difference. Yeah.
And I feel like so often those things only come up when we're in a fight. I can't believe you talked to, you chose your mom over me. You wanted to, and but then it just becomes like a tender bruise area. So then we don't ever want to talk about it in calm times, when actually those calm times, I think, are the best times for us to talk about it, because we can
Yes.
really uncover some layers and get to those meaningful conversations. And it's like you said at the very beginning, it's the power of that intentionality in calm times, and not just waiting for a fight to bring up those important topics: money,
Right.
sex, in-laws,
Yeah.
all of those things, they do matter.
And if we're bringing up when we're upset, we're not going to resolve it. We're not going to get the answer that we really want. And so having something where we can talk about it during the calm times, where we can both listen to each other well, and then make our plans for what steps we're going to take now. I love that. It's so good. We talked a little bit about serving your spouse, but what about the whole idea of, I get people that say in counseling, well, as soon as he does this, I'll do that. Or as soon as she does this, I'll do that. But, but can we serve and just throw out this whole deal of waiting them to do something first?
Oh, I love that you asked that question, and I want to turn it on you to see what you have to say. I mean, I definitely think one of the ways, when Jesus came in all of his teaching, he kept trying to get us to understand the kingdom of God is like, the kingdom of God is like. And I do believe that one of the principles of the kingdom of God, that we will have the most fulfilling life on this planet when we live according to the kingdom of God principles, is that so often we give before we get. And we see
Mm,
that with our money, we see that with our children. I mean, we give to them so much before we ever
sure.
get anything returned. And so I do think there's an element of that in our marriage with our spouse, that there is a spiritual call that I believe Jesus and God helps us with on a daily basis, to give before we get.
Hmm.
But here's my question for you: in that is that in marriages, there always seems to be the spouse who is more available and ready to give. There seems to be the more natural giver and the more natural taker, and I don't think these are always gender lined up. But
Right.
um, what do you think when one spouse is continually giving, 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 and the other is just taking, 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 and the person does think this is a spiritual principle, but yet they end up as a doormat, or their opinions aren't heard anymore? Or I do think there is a tension there, but what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, as a counselor, I'd say we got to talk about this, because you start, either resentment can come up, I think, in situations like that, because the principle really is, if I give, you're going to give back. Maybe not in the same way, but, because you love and care for each other. And then, so if that doesn't happen, then you're thinking, what's wrong? And you keep giving and they don't respond, or they don't even say thank you or whatever. And so you either kind of start building resentment, or you kind of back off on that. And so I think you have to say, hey, let's talk about this, or let's go to a counselor and talk about this, or let's go to our pastor and talk about this, because I love serving you. I want to serve you, but I want you to love me back too. I think that's where Coach Chapman's book, The Five Love Language, is great, because if you can really understand your spouse's love language and do the things that make them feel loved, then you've got a tool. And maybe sometimes we don't do things because we don't know, but I don't think that's an excuse anymore. You can just go to ChatGPT, or you got a lot of options out there to get answers anymore. And so I think that's really taking the time to understand each other and to be willing to give. And I think when you do, what I found in our marriage, when I give, I get more out of it than I give. There's just something about that, and making Nancy feel loved and cherished and cared for. And I wish I could be consistent with that every day, and I'm not, because my selfishness gets in, and I think I'm a little tired. Yeah, I'm too tired to do that today, but I try to persevere through it as much as I can.
Of course you do. But it's so against our human nature, that our human nature tends to want to think about ourselves first. But
yeah,
man, that's such a powerful perspective, and what we get when we spend the day thinking, what can I give towards my spouse? How can I make Judah happy? How can I make his life easier today? How can I serve him? That, even just those thoughts are so much better than, oh, I can't believe I'm not getting what I want, and how come I'm not seen, and how come I'm not, and you just get more out of one than the other, and one gets us to where we want to go.
Yes. Well, and I left out the big part is I think God will help you if you pray about it. God, help me to show me one way to serve my spouse today, to show her or him that I love them, and just kind of put it in God's hands too. And then when He prompts you and you follow through, you think, wow, that was pretty good, and God really answered my prayer, and I followed through. And so, I've had one couple one time, they kind of played a game for a period of time of who could outserve who, and they had a ball with it. I mean, they both felt so loved and cherished during that time. They didn't keep doing it forever, but they probably did it for 2 or 3 weeks. And just, I think some of those patterns stuck and carried forward, but they just kind of went on, we're going to do overkill for a while and just see who wins, that kind of deal. Who can outserve the other person. And I loved that. It was great.
It's so fun, because that also changes a mindset. I think so many people listening might think, oh, that's pie in the sky. No way do you actually get more when you give. And if you've never experienced that, then that's hard to believe, because it does go against so much of what our world and culture tells us. So that's such a fun exercise to say, hey, just try it. And see what happens, and experience the joy of giving and serving, because it is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add a couple other things I really want to talk about just a little bit. In week 46, you share the 2 hardest words for you to say, even after all these years that you and Judah have been married. What are those 2 words, and why are they so crucial to a marriage?
Oh, and I realize I'm a hardwired, pretty independent person, so probably has a lot to do with me, but I'm curious if you've noticed other couples who have a hard time saying these 2 words. And the 2 words that are so challenging and difficult for me are, I need. For me to admit my need for Judah, my need for his love, my need for his affection, my need for whatever it is I need in those moments, it is just challenging for me as a human being
Yeah.
to admit my need. I think first of all, because of my wiring, I'm wired independently. But second of all, is
Right.
I still believe this fantasy that I know I shouldn't believe, but that is, well, Judah should know what I need and he should be able to read my mind. And a thought that somehow it cheapens it if I have to ask for it and then he gives it. And what I found is it actually doesn't cheapen it when I say, "Hey, I need you to put your arms around me and hold me right now. I just
Mhm.
gotta," and then he comes in, does it. It actually doesn't cheapen it at all. But that is a fantasy that I think so often as spouses that we have. Am I the only person who those words are challenging for? Have you noticed it in your practice with
Oh,
other people
no,
too?
no, and I was just kinda thinking Nancy's very, type A also, and I think she's certainly better about it and has been for a long time, but I think that was hard for her, even when she knew she wanted to say those words to me because she needs something because of whatever was going on or something else, I think they were hard, and I think as a guy, uh, that was hard for me to realize. I'm not sure what really was the trick in that, seeing her as the nurturer, which I think God designed her to be, but also as the helper or the one who comes alongside me. And when the scripture in the Psalm that says, "Where does my help come from?" It comes from the Lord. And so I think helping, knowing that I needed her, and part of that I think as a
Mm,
guy, Chelsea, is I thought I was supposed to do everything myself. I'm a
wow.
guy. I'm supposed to do everything. I had a lot to learn about emotions and those kind of things. And over time, as I learned those, I realized there was a time, and I don't remember when it was, I realized Nancy has a perspective that I don't have a clue about. She has wisdom, she has an insight, she has an intuition with people. And I would never have asked her help in any of those areas early on. But then when I
Wow.
did and just valued who she was and realized, oh my gosh, God has given her gifts that I don't have, and that He's given me gifts she doesn't have. And when we learned to come together in that, we were stronger. And it's kind of like, okay, we complement each other. Where I'm weak, she was strong, and where I'm strong, she was weak. And we learned to value that instead of just ignoring it, I guess.
Or instead of thinking that the value is in doing it myself,
Yeah,
realizing that the value is in doing it together and being stronger together and letting those areas complement each other. It's like
absolutely.
God put us together for a reason, and we really truly can be so much stronger when we do it together. And I feel like we're often attracted to people who are strong in the areas that we're weak, and that's such a beautiful tool when we
Hmm.
can utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, there was time when Nancy wouldn't even say, "I need you to hug me." Um, I kind of would figure it out
Mm.
sometimes and do it. And kind of what you were saying, I can't. After all our years of marriage, I still can't read her mind, and so you do have to share things with your spouse. And what I tell couples in counseling, okay, they can't read your mind, so tell them. And then if they don't do it, then you could get mad at them, but at least tell them what you
Yeah.
need first and give them a chance
Oh,
to do that. And most people will do that, and it's really easy for her to say, "I need a hug now," or "I need just to sit down and I need to sit in your lap for a while," or, whatever it is, that we can say those things to each other and not have a barrier there. Yeah, it's made a
right,
big
and the
difference.
likelihood the likelihood of getting our needs met increases significantly when we can just clearly
Absolutely.
and calmly ask for what those needs are, and we all wanna get our needs met, and our spouse wants to meet our needs. Our spouse wants to be
Yes,
there for us, and
absolutely.
seeing them as that person, I think can really has helped me be able to say, "Hey, I need this," and I has helped me with my 2 most difficult words.
Yeah, no, that's really good, and I think it's something that probably all of us at some point deal with. Just maybe pride or selfish, whatever it is, that kind of gets in our way at times. We talk about in Awesome Marriage a lot about being a student of your spouse. You mentioned staying
Mm,
curious about them. Just a couple of tips for somebody of okay, how do we do that in a marriage? Even couples, you guys been married 25 years,
yep.
uh, and so how do we keep doing that?
Oh, that's I I'm so glad you brought this up too, because I think a lack of curiosity is what causes the drift, and then all of a sudden we're curious about this person over here, or that I think it's first of all recognizing that our spouse is changing and growing every day, and we
Mm,
can't actually take for granted that they are the person that they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and our goal isn't to stunt their growth or keep them from growing, it's to grow with them and alongside of them. So
mm,
I think first of all, just recognize that they're growing today. They have had things come into their mind that maybe have shifted their perspective, or that they're seeing something differently. And so, even if it's just, hey, what's the most interesting thing that you saw on social media today? What's the most interesting news article that you read? Or what's the most, and learning to ask those questions from a place of curiosity. As I think it really starts with recognizing they are growing and changing a little bit every day. And I'm curious to know, how are you growing? How are you changing? What's
yeah,
affected your thought process? What scripture did you read? What did God say? And just keeping that in everyday habit, and recognizing that they're not the same person that they were 10 years ago. You could just take them for granted. Oh, I already know that about her. I already know that
right.
about him. I don't need to figure it
Yeah,
figure it out. But we want to have that hunger to grow together and have that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
curiosity.
You can't just put them in a box and set aside. I say I believe that in a lifetime is not long enough to learn everything there is about your spouse. And so if
Mm.
you're bored, it's really on you, because in fact, last weekend, Nancy and I, what were we talking about? She shared something with me about an insecurity that she had with a group of girls when she was in middle school. We had never talked about that before, but she was talking
Whoa.
about how that something had triggered in her that kind of brought her back to that a feeling or something. And so, yeah, I didn't know that. And so then we just kind of talked about it a little bit and how she handled it. And I didn't know that. And so I think you've just got to stay curious, like you said.
And how did it make you feel after she shared that story that you'd never heard about? What were the relationship dynamics after you had
Oh,
that
it
exchange?
it one I empathized with her at this 13-year-old that I didn't know yet because I didn't meet her till she was 18, and yeah, there was I had it was interesting, Chelsea. I had some sadness, I had some anger at those girls too. I don't know why. I'm just protecting my wife, I guess. But it was
Yeah.
something I was so glad that she shared with me, and it helped me see that was something that she went through. Yeah, we were talking about a friend of hers whose daughter was going through a little bit of those same things, and Nancy said, "I went through the same thing." That's how we got into it, and I thought,
Wow.
"Wow, yeah." It's just that, and that she felt comfortable to share that with me. It wasn't like, "Oh, I
And
don't want him to ever think I was insecure. Oh, I can't tell him that." No, it was like, I was really insecure then.
and just that depth of knowing somebody else and being known and being loved
Yes.
is I truly believe one of the greatest joys that we can have on this planet, is that feeling of intimacy and connection that is the goal. It's the prize. It's worth the curiosity, and just that moment that you two shared, that those don't end after 10 years or 20 years or 30
No.
years of marriage, that we get to have them for the rest of our lives and our marriages and
Yeah,
our journey together. I think is such an incredible gift.
it is, and you go
And to
through
see
different
it
seasons.
that
Yes.
way. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and so there's always I've never been bored in our marriage. I think, and I don't
Mm.
think Nancy has either, because we do stay really curious about each other, and we try new things together. We like trying to, we started playing pickleball during COVID, and ended up loving it. And have some friends that love to play with us, so we picked that up. I didn't even know what pickleball was 6 years ago. Pickleball was 6 years ago. And so just kind of continuing to say, hey, what do you want to do? We go exploring a lot. Well, Sunday afternoon we'll take a drive, and we'll just head out to a different direction we haven't been in a while, and just see what's out there. So yeah, I think it's being intentional, like we talked about, like you did
Yep.
so much. I think around your book is being intentional each week for a year, and growing in those different things, and knowing that that is going to make a difference for sure. So really, kind of, what would you want listeners today to be encouraged by? What is one thing that
Oh,
you would want them to be encouraged by?
I think that the marriage of your dreams isn't a fantasy. It's not far off. It's not
Mm.
It's not difficult. It's work.
Yeah.
What is it? It's simple. You can attain it. You can have it. I think, that story, Dr. Kim, you told of that 80-year-old man every Saturday night. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just going to stick with me. And I think a lot of people could hear that and think that that is just a fantasy and that doesn't exist anymore. And I would love for listeners to know it does exist. It can exist,
Yes.
and it can be yours with a level of intentionality and just some simple daily walking through. The only way we can live this life is every day. And Jesus said, "Hey, tomorrow is going to have enough troubles, but today, call it today." And I believe that every marriage can make decisions today that are going to take us one step closer to that
Hmm.
beautiful picture of what marriage can be and should be and was intended to be. It's not an impossible dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it, when, I guess there's a little more, but when you go to a funeral and say it's a guy and they talk about all of his business accomplishments and stuff, and they never hardly mention his family or his relationship with the Lord, I just get sad because I want when my day comes, which I hope's a long time from now, that they say he loved his wife well. He loved his kids and grandkids well. He loved the Lord well. That's what I want. And I know that what I do today is going to determine whether somebody's able to say that without lying or not, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Judah,
yeah.
Judah and I have a saying that we live our life by, which is better at 70. And Judah's dad passed away when actually when he was 60. So we're thinking, okay, we're giving ourselves 10
Yeah.
extra years on that. But in that moment when he changed his eternal status from earth to heaven, when his dad passed away, the church that he built wasn't what was significant. The books that he had written weren't what was
Yeah.
significant. It was his family, his wife, his children and grandchildren who were gathered around him. And it's so true. We live with that mantra as, hey, we're going to be better. We're going to be better at 70, better spouses, better lovers of Jesus, better lovers of the Lord. That's the goal. And it's not a far off fantasy.
No, it can be very real. Last question. What are you loving about your marriage today?
Oh, I am loving about my marriage today. As we're transitioning into an empty nest season, we have, one 16-year-old still
Right.
at home. The other two boys are gone. The excitement that brings. I mean, there's a sadness of
Sure.
I miss my kids. It's like they finally become these wonderful human beings and who are enjoyable to talk to, and then they leave us.
Yes,
But,
and then they leave, right.
yeah, but the excitement of the new chapter that Judah and I are about to walk in together, and the new hobbies that we get to develop. We play a card game that we so enjoy, because that's kind of been our like, hey, we can do this in this season. But to think of the new hobbies that we get to develop and new rhythms and seasons, I'm really looking forward to. And I just think it's going to be a fun adventure that we get to go on. And grandkids. I mean, those are a bit down the road, but we're just pinching ourselves for grandkids. So that gives us so much to look forward to.
I know. We tell our, when our granddaughter, when they got married, and I was blessed to do their ceremony, but yeah, you don't want to just say, okay, have a kid, you got to wait and those kind of things. But my grandkids are great, and you guys will be great grandparents because you look forward to it and you enjoy it, and you want them to be an important part of your life moving forward. And so that's really good. So the book is I Do Today and Tomorrow and Forever, Staying Intentional with Chelsea Smith. And gosh, this has been a good conversation. I love what you and Judah do. I love how you love people and care for people. What the good things that you've done in your church, and just appreciate you so much. And it's been a ball.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being an example and doing what you do and letting people see marriage, because I believe that's one of the most powerful things that a generation needs. So thank you for everything that you do and being who you are. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks again for joining me for this week's Awesome Marriage Podcast. Next week, Nancy joins me, and we're going to talk about more than mistletoe, staying spiritually rooted and emotionally connected in your marriage this Christmas. We'll see you then.